One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been the DR trip and watching my class grow closer together.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been Dr. Carlson's Bible classes.
One thing that God has taught me is to just stay in constant communication with Him every day, even if it's just something small.
One of the things that was most encouraging for me during my time at Southwest was junior and senior level Bible class, because it really pushed me to think about the Bible and our faith in new ways rather than kind of just sticking with the old norms of what I used to think about.
One way that I've grown in my faith during high school is I've been able to connect the intellectual and emotional aspects of my faith.
I think a lot of people go through the motions of really feeling God's presence and then other times not feeling it at all. I've learned that I can stand on the truth that His presence has been there every step of the way and that He's with me in the future steps that I take.
I think the thing that I've been most encouraged by is my classmates. Their willingness to ask really good questions and go into deep discussions about faith and doubts, I think, has been really encouraging and wanted me to dig deeper into my own faith.
One thing that God has taught me is really how to deal with change. Transferring here my sophomore year was a really difficult change for myself, but looking back, I'm really grateful on how it impacted my life and where I am in my faith now because of it.
Something that God has taught me that I would like to share with others is that He has a plan for everything and everyone, and even in times where it seems like things are uncertain, you can trust in God and know that everything will work out for the best.
One thing God has taught me at my time at Southwest is to put your best foot forward in everything that you do.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been creating personal relationships with teachers that help me to grow in my faith.
And one of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey over the past 4 years was the devotion and wisdom of the Southwest faculty and how they have modeled living for Christ.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school was definitely my teachers my junior year. They not only helped me grow in my faith immensely, but also encouraged me in my education and showed that they really cared for me.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school is experiencing the presence of God, whether in an amazing worship moment or at church or in Bible classes, but also like in the mundane things like work or school.
One thing God has shown me at my time at Southwest has been how to lead a life that pleases Him and points others to Him.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been the opportunity to serve on our worship team. I've been very blessed to have a group of people that are very passionate about worship. And seeing people worship up in front and during encounter is an amazing experience.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school is by studying the Bible and doing scripture memorization. And one thing God has taught me is to become more bold in your faith.
The area that I think I've grown most in my faith is in trust and thankfulness. It took me most of high school to finally see how trusting God's plan can truly work out, but I would have never seen myself here and in this community through all the Christ-centered friendships that He's brought me.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been my D group. It's so nice to have a group of people that you can have a God-centered relationship with and be open as much or as little as you want without any judgment.
God has really shown me who I am and where my identity lies. As a freshman, I've definitely struggled with, am I even good at anything? Do I stand out at all? But I think I've gone through so many neat experiences and opportunities here at Southwest that God has used to show me what I'm good at and how He can use me.
One way I've grown in my faith through high school is by implementing private time with myself and God, and by also making it a priority to go to church both on Sundays and Wednesdays and be an active participant in worship and in listening during encounters.
One of the most encouraging things in my high school spiritual journey has been able to do service projects and trips.
One thing that has been encouraging to my faith journey over the past 4 years is having friends who truly care about their faith walk. It's just been encouraging to see other teenagers trying to live out their faith, and that encourages me in mine.
And something that God has taught me is that He is my refuge. He is the person I can turn to all the time and take comfort in. He's taught me this a lot through Psalm 23, and He's just given us everything we need to be able to have an abundant and peaceful life in Him because of who He is. So, yeah.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been going to the DR and really growing in my faith and connecting with my classmates.
One thing that God has shown me as a high schooler is that I was blessed to be born into a good socioeconomic situation. And through experiences like the Dominican Republic trip, I learned that I can show gratitude for that blessing by serving others.
One thing God has taught me during high school that I'd like to share with others is that a lot of things that happen, whether that be with friendships, with grades, or with like relationships with teachers and other things, not all of that is going to have a purpose. And sometimes you're just not going to know why certain things happen, but to trust Him through that process.
My faith has been encouraged at Southwest through the friends that God has given to me. They help me to pursue God every day and to want to deepen my relationship with Him.
Something that God is showing me is that I am loved beyond measure. He has shown this love for me through placing genuine friends in my life that encourage my walk with Christ.
One way I've grown my faith during high school is I've learned to be more reflective and intentional in my prayer life.
One way that I have grown in my faith at Southwest Christian is to rely on God and know that He has a plan and that I cannot do it alone, and that we need God to do everything that we do.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school is the books you read in Dr. Carlson's Bible classes. I just learned so much about faith and about Christianity in general from them.
One thing that has been an encouragement for me in my faith has been the community of believers. It's great to see so many passionate people who care deeply about God.
One thing that God has been teaching me is how He can come into our lives, not just in the way of like daily devotions where we go and seek Him out, but times where we're alone, like going and seeking Him while we're doing other activities or pursuing goals or something like that. Can be times where we go and we try to find God and can actually have moments with Him.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been getting to know the teachers at Southwest. They have been such a huge encouragement in my life, not only academically, but also spiritually, and I couldn't be more thankful for them.
One of the most encouraging things for me in my 4 years has been the great Bible teachers that I've had. I've been very fortunate to have teachers that really care, and they've really helped me grow and learn and mature in my 4 years at Southwest. So huge thank you to them.
One thing that I've learned is that doubt is neutral. You can use it to fuel your curiosity and growth, or you can let it break your faith. So you should use your doubts to grow instead of letting it crumble.
One way I've grown in my faith is I've became a lot bolder. So I've been reading my Bible during school. I've been going up front to worship, and I've been leading Bible studies every Thursday morning. And one thing that I just really learned is that nobody cares about you. No one's paying attention to you, and no one's looking at you. So do what you need to.
One way I've grown in my faith journey in high school has been just surrounding myself with good people who push me to be a better person, and God has taught me that everything happens for a reason.
One way I've grown my faith during high school is by digging deep into the spiritual practices like Sabbath, solitude, and prayer.
One thing that Southwest has taught me that I like to pass on to others is that your faith has to be your own. It can't be your parents' faith, your pastor's faith, your friend's faith. You have to seek it out for yourself.
One thing God has taught me is to never give up.
One thing that God has taught me is to see the beauty in the everyday. He's helped me to slow down and appreciate all the small things, and He's taught me how to enjoy the process instead of always looking towards the end.
One way I've grown in my faith in high school is by realizing that God is the only thing that truly fulfills us. Anything we try to put in place of Him will leave us empty and wanting more. But Christ truly satisfies us.
The most encouraging thing in my spiritual journey in high school has been encounter and D groups.
One way I've grown in my faith is that I got to know God, that I could pray anytime I needed. I could talk to Him whenever.
One thing that God has been teaching me is to surrender all my plans to Him and to just always remember that His plans are greater and better than what I could have expected or wanted.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been Mr. Goldie's class in philosophy due to its deep questions regarding the nature of our Christian faith.
One way that I've grown in my faith during high school is to put my trust in Him and basically know that He has my back.
One thing God has taught me that I'd like to share with others is just to be patient and trust His timing, because His timing is greater than our own.
There have been some tough times in high school with my faith, but one way that I've grown is by just knowing that God is the greatest. He has me in His hands. He is always there. He's imminent.
One thing God has taught me is that He always has a plan for everything.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey of high school has probably been Dr. Carlson's Bible class junior year, because it challenged my thinking the most that it ever has been.
One aspect of my faith that I have grown in has definitely been prayer, just using prayer to communicate with God instead of just like a list of what I want.
I really have learned that prayer is a powerful tool and has eternal effects. And so just using prayer to intervene on other people's behalves.
One thing that's encouraged me is being on worship team and seeing firsthand how much the teachers and leaders care about students' spiritual life.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school has been how I realized that even when no one else was there for me, God still was.
One thing God has taught me is that only He can provide true fulfilling peace and comfort.
The most encouraging things for me in my high school experience has been the DR trip. Went down there and my faith really just bloomed. I got to know God in a way I never thought possible.
One way I've grown in my faith in high school has been going to D group every week and just having really deep conversations and growing with each other.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been the D group times.
One thing that God has taught me is that if you want something, you need to go and get it and vocalize it. And don't procrastinate, because that's not going to get you anywhere.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school was the DR trip and seeing how open and vulnerable my classmates were with each other and their faith.
The most encouraging thing in my high school career has been all of the Bible classes that I've taken. The classes have been very helpful in satisfying my need for an intellectual approach to the Bible that encourages a lens of context and various perspectives.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been learning through my parents about their walks and learning from them and applying their knowledge of life to my own life.
One thing God has taught me is to not take these years in Southwest for granted. Don't waste them, because they really are special.
Personally, I think D group has influenced my spiritual life the most.
One thing that God has taught me at Southwest is to not let the fear of judgment stop me from what I'm called to do.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school is attending Encounter and D groups every week and really just building my relationships with my peers.
One thing God has taught me that I'd like to share with others is you can't be everything for everyone every time. And if you try, you'll end up being nothing for yourself. You'll miss the chance to become the person that God is molding you to be. His standard should be the only one that defines you, and pursuing that standard should be enough.
One thing that has been encouraging for my spiritual journey at Southwest has been the people here, such as the teachers and classmates, who just reflect Christ so well every day that encourage me to do the same, especially during the DR, just seeing everyone come together just to serve and just to glorify God and all the works we were doing there.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been my incredible friends who I love so much and who encourage me every day to become a better person and who have made me who I am now.
One thing that God has taught me is to listen to your parents, because they always know what's best for you, and whenever they try and help you in making decisions, it's always out of love.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school is through the wisdom and information I've received from the Bible department and how I've been able to implement what they've taught me in my life.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in my time at Southwest has been just learning that just because you might not be super spiritual doesn't mean you're a bad Christian. It just means you're still growing.
I've been really encouraged by my faith here at Southwest, just through the way my thoughts and my questions about God have deepened and grown. I feel like I have a whole nother level to my faith that I didn't have as a freshman, and I've just really relied on my teachers here to challenge me and help me grow in that.
And one of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey during high school was our senior trip to the DR, because it was super cool to not only grow in relationship with my classmates, but also grow and strengthen in my relationship with Jesus.
One way I grew in my faith in high school is by being on the worship team. I was able to spend time with him every day and learn how to glorify him with my gifts.
One way I've grown in my faith is through personal time with God, through prayer, reading my Bible, and doing devotionals.
One way that I've grown in my faith in high school is praying to God like he's my best friend and talking to him about everything, because God should be your best friend and you should really bring everything to him.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey has been the DR trip.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been having Bible teachers that help uplift me and motivate my faith.
One way I've grown in my faith throughout high school is just being able to ask questions and even having some doubts. Being able to go to my teachers and ask questions has really helped me.
One thing that God has taught me during high school is that having just a few godly friendships can be much more impactful than having a big friend group.
One thing that has really encouraged me in my faith during my time at Southwest
has been the community of teachers and friends that have held me accountable for my actions and pushed me to be a better believer and follower.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school was the DR trip because I was able to talk to people who are at similar points in their spiritual journey and just connect with them and encourage each other.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school is really trying to appreciate the time we have to worship during encounter.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been just getting to grow in the faith together as a class.
The most encouraging thing on my spiritual walk in high school has been the teachers. Prior to Southwest, I never had any real mentors outside of my friends or family. However, when I came to Southwest, I developed real relationships with my teachers, and they have taught me so much.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school have been Mr. Shelton and Mrs. Langer. They've been a constant source of encouragement throughout my 4 years in high school.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school is reading the Bible a few nights a week.
One way I've grown in my faith is my desire to learn and know more about God, Christianity, the Bible and its interpretations, and what it really means to be a follower of Christ.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been D groups. Being able to openly ask questions and have a leader to talk to has helped me.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been through my connections with the teachers and faculty.
One way I have grown in my faith during high school is by growing closer with people who have taught me what it looks like to live a godly life.
One way I've grown in my faith is through Christ-centered friendships and wise mentors. I truly believe that I've grown in my desire to be close to the Lord because of deep conversations that I've had with others.
I've been most encouraged in my faith by Dr. Carlson's class because I've been challenged in my understandings and pushed to make my faith my own.
One way that I've grown in my faith during high school is to be bolder in my faith and to recognize how important spending time in the Word is.
I have grown in my faith through D groups and serving the community in the DR.
One thing God has taught me about His character through high school is how much His power prevails through trials and how much those trials shape you into the person you were created to be.
One way that I've grown in my faith in high school is understanding the Bible through the first years in Old Testament and New Testament class, and then expanding on those ideas later in the more advanced classes.
One thing God has taught me is to not judge people right away. I've met so many amazing people here, and God has blessed me through them.
One thing that God has shown me in the last 4 years is that He has a plan for my life, and that His plan will work out, and that everything in the end will work out for His good.
One thing that God has taught me that I like to share with others is the idea that He has a plan for your life and He's working through your experiences and the people around you to show you something or help you through what you're going through.
One way I've grown my faith through high school is my relationship with God. My relationship has become my own, and I've been able to pursue my own relationship with Christ, and it has definitely changed me and helped me become a better person.
One thing God has taught me that I'd like to share with others is how to pray. I'll always include a bit of how not letting my will be done, but God's will, and that has worked out pretty well for me.
And I've grown my faith through the DR trip.
One thing that God has taught me during my high school career is to basically just be yourself, and you will ultimately be happier being yourself rather than to follow someone else's standards.
One thing God has taught me is that you never know what someone's going through, so just don't miss an opportunity to come alongside someone and to encourage and grow in relationship, because ultimately the most important thing is people.
One thing that I think God has really been teaching me in high school is how important and special it is when you share your faith and your friendships, and how strong that they can grow through having the tough conversations with them and just being open and honest about the stuff you guys are going through with your faith and just being able to grow together in them.
One thing that God has taught me that I would like to share with others is that God's timeline is different from my own, and His desires for me may be different than my desires for my own life.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been the DR trip and seeing our grades serve others for the glory of God.
One thing God has taught me is to spend time with those who care about you.
And one of the most encouraging things for my spiritual journey in high school has been teachers, coaches, and students surrounding me, just because they're all very uplifting.
One of the most encouraging things that has helped my spiritual journey in high school has been the Bible classes. All 4 years, the Bible classes I've taken and the teachers I've had, they've opened my mind and challenged my perspectives with questions and ideas that I'd never previously considered. I've learned new, deeper ways to think about my faith, about religion, and I feel so much better equipped to take on the secular world that I will encounter after leaving these walls.
One of the most encouraging things for me throughout high school has been the teachers. They all try to make close personal relationships with each student. I think that's really helpful to have good conversations and really connect with them.
Over the past 4 years, the Lord has truly taught me the importance of surrender. He's changed how I go about life and taught me to run to Him first in every situation. I rest and walk with Jesus in peace, knowing I'm not in control of my circumstances.
And one way that I've grown in my faith during high school is by learning how to read my Bible and then also being surrounded by Christian friends who really helped to encourage me in growing in my faith and pursuing God.
And one thing I was encouraged by this year was our volleyball devotions.
One of the most encouraging things in my high school spiritual journey has been Dr. Carlson's Bible class.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been encounters, just being a part of that environment and hearing the speakers and just the worshiping. It's kept me strong in my faith.
One of the most encouraging things on my spiritual journey has been connecting with teachers.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school was the DR trip. It was super cool to see our entire class go together and hang out with people that we probably wouldn't have if it weren't for this trip.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been walking alongside of people, including my friends and my teachers, who are encouraging me in my faith.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey during high school has been the adult mentors in my life, like parents, teachers, coaches, and my D group leader, who have spoken life into me throughout the highs and lows of high school.
One thing God has taught me that I'd like to share with others is to make sure to put Himself first in everything we do and to not idolize anything over Him.
One thing God has taught me is that I'm never truly alone within the walk of life.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school is through taking philosophy. I've learned a lot about what different philosophers have said about your faith and the mind and the body, and it's helped me look into my own life with a different perspective than I had before.
One thing that God has taught me over the years and actually is still teaching me is how to hear God's voice and listen to Him even through the struggles of high school and of the future. He's taught me to quiet myself and my mind and just to focus on Him, which has been really helpful.
One thing that God has taught me that I'd kind of like to share with some other people is how important it is to not put your identity into the things of this world. But it's super important to put it in Christ only.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school would probably be Dr. Carlson's Bible class at the DR trip.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school has been my all or nothing thinking when it comes to Christ and my walk with God. I've been able to recognize that my walk with Christ is ongoing and that I am constantly learning, redirecting, etc.
One way that I have grown in my faith during high school is surrendering all my fear and anxieties to Him and turning to Him instead of worldly desires.
One way I have grown in my faith during high school is through worship during encounter, especially the past 2 years, and being able to go to the front.
One way that I've grown in my faith in high school has definitely been going on the DR trip. I felt like it was not only a great way to connect with my classmates, but also with God, as we were just surrounded by such a God-loving community with the help of YWAM.
One thing God has taught me is to surround yourself with good people.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been connecting with other people through D groups and the DR and supporting each other in our walk with Christ.
One thing God has taught me that I like to share with others is that it's okay to move on, whether it's people, relationships, situations, etc.
One thing that God has taught me that I'd like to share with others is that understanding the Christian faith is a lot different than actually doing the Christian faith and following the teachings.
One of the major ways that I've grown in my Christian faith throughout high school has been the confirmation and acceptance of my own faith, as beforehand I had many issues with God that I have been able to rectify thanks to, in part, Southwest Christian.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been the teachers and how they pushed me to become stronger in my faith.
One way I've grown in my faith has been through Dr. Carlson's classes. Worldview specifically has helped me become stronger in knowing why I believe what I believe.
And one thing that God has taught me throughout my time at Southwest is that He really has a plan for us and that His opinion of us and His plan is ultimately the only thing that matters. So we can trust in Him and we don't have to worry about anything else.
One thing God has taught me and is still teaching me is the importance of forgiveness in relationships.
One thing that God has taught me that I would like to share with others is to trust in Him even when we are afraid. Even though we may not know what will happen, God has a plan and He will always be there for us.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey has been my teachers and my friends. And I would just say that the teachers at Southwest really care about all of us and they want to help us grow spiritually. And when you find a good group of friends that comes along beside you, they also help you to grow spiritually.
And I would just say that you can really tell during the DR trip that everyone is super encouraging and everyone really cares about each other.
And then one of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been teachers actually wanting to get to know me and get to know more about me.
One way that I've grown in my faith is thinking about Bible stories more deeply and trying to interpret them with my own thoughts instead of just relying on adults and teachers to tell me what they mean.
One experience that really encouraged my spiritual journey in high school is the trip to the Dominican Republic, because it was just super cool to see how much love for the Lord those people have and how they were able to appreciate all the little things regardless of what circumstance they were in, and how they can just praise God through everything that they do.
One thing God has taught me throughout high school is the importance of having a good community and having people around you who will challenge you and uplift you.
One thing that has been encouraging in my spiritual journey is being able to have discussions with my peers. I like having discussions with my peers because sometimes it feels like they relate to things that maybe other people don't.
I think one way I grew my faith was through teachers' support and help.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been the teachers. They really care for you and they have a lot of spiritual insight and wisdom to share that you can take with you forever.
Something that's been encouraging in my spiritual life at Southwest has been my relationship with teachers and other students, and how they've been able to call out some of my giftings and equip me with ways to further in those giftings, and through that I've been able to bless other people and grow deeper in my spiritual life.
One way I've grown in my faith is engaging in D groups and making the most of it.
One of the ways I've grown during my time at Southwest has been kind of looking at objections to the faith and realizing just how complex Christianity is. And I've kind of grown from a base level knowledge kind of about the Bible and Christianity to like a higher knowledge about kind of this is why we believe what we believe and kind of how to defend it. So that's been really helpful for me.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school is the Dominican Republic trip.
One thing God has taught me is to surround yourself with good people and friends who truly care about you.
One way I've grown in my faith during high school was paying attention in Dr. Carlson's Bible class. It taught me a lot throughout my junior year.
One way that I've grown in my faith during high school is having intentional conversations with my teachers and my friends about my walk with God and my faith journey.
One way I have grown in my faith is learning how to take the initiative, because you really have to make this faith your own.
One of the ways I have grown in my faith here at high school was by learning things from a bunch of outside sources from the Bible. So theologians like Tim Keller and C.S. Lewis and also early church fathers have really helped me expand my knowledge.
And one way I have grown in my faith during high school is being taught that doubt doesn't make you a bad Christian. Throughout my years at Southwest, I've been constantly reminded that struggling and stumbling and sometimes even questioning your faith shows that you are maturing in your spiritual walk and are all signs that you are making an honest effort in understanding what it really means to be a Christian.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school has been seeing my friends grow closer in their relationship with God.
One thing that I really want to just quickly share is be kind. And I know it's kind of cliche, but I really believe that if we really commit to living this out, it'll make our community happier and more connected. So that's all.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey at Southwest has been the opportunity to serve the Southwest community through tech. This opportunity to serve not only cultivates the growth of my skills, but it also reminds me to serve with a humble heart, just like Christ did.
One of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey in high school would have been Dr. Carlson's Bible classes junior year.
And one of the most encouraging things in my spiritual journey here at Southwest Christian has been bold classmates. So seeing my classmates pray for people and read their Bibles and worship up front has been really encouraging for me.